Welcome to the final part of the final lecture on this course on computational fluid dynamics. In this part of this lecture, we're going to run through two short examples that demonstrate how to design your finite volume mesh when you use the k-epsilon and k-omega closure models. We'll see that the non-dimensional groups that you've seen in previous courses on turbulent flow are very useful tools that enable us to calculate where mesh cells near walls should be placed. Careful placement of near wall mesh should, hopefully, allow relatively trouble-free simulation using these models. So, we've already seen in the previous part of this lecture that different turbulence models resolve in different areas very well and different areas poorly. K-epsilon cannot resolve close to a wall, k-omega can, and there are various rules of thumb that govern mesh design using these two turbulence models. Now, when we're designing the mesh for our physical situation, we need to be able to relate the actual geometric distance away from a wall, which we're calling y, to our non-dimensional world, where we have all our quantities defined, which we call y+. In our non-dimensional world, we know that y+ around 5 gives us the viscous sublayer, up to 30 gives us the buffer layer, and over 30 gives us a turbulent core, and so on and so forth. And all the placement guidelines are with respect to these non-dimensional quantities. And so if we're designing a pipe or an aeroplane wing or some fancy piece of heat exchange equipment, then we need to know what physical length scale these non-dimensional distances actually relate to. Now, if you recall from previous fluid mechanics courses, you will have been introduced to this non-dimensional grouping here, which allows us to calculate what our non-dimensional quantity y+ actually is. So y+ over y is root tau naught rho over mu, or rearranging. For our use, if we were to work out the geometric distance y that relates to a certain non-dimensional quantity y+, we multiply y+ by mu over root tau naught rho. So tau naught here is a measure of shear stress, and of course we need to be able to relate that shear stress to something that's relatively easily calculable for the flow problem that we've got, and I'm going to demonstrate how to do that in a minute. So let's start by means of an example. Let's suppose we have water at 25 degrees C, hence defining density and viscosity. Let's say that water is flowing in a square section duct, and that square section duct has an area of 1 square centimetre. It's also 5 centimetres long. Let's say that water flows at a superficial velocity of 1 metre per second. Now, let's assume that we're going to make a simple flow simulation of this using the k-omega closure model resolving to the wall, and let's say our Reynolds number is roughly 10,000. What we're trying to do is to design the mesh that will allow us to use the k-omega model. So we need to know what physical distance the 10 cells in the viscosity affected region near the wall, y+ less than or equal to 30, actually correspond to in the real world. So let's calculate the various quantities that enable us to calculate y. So let's start off by estimating that shear stress tau. There's a number of ways you can do this. The way I'm going to show you here is rough and ready, but what we can do is we can relate tau to our definition of friction factor Cf. So tau is Cf times a half rho u squared. U here is my superficial velocity, rho of course is my density, which is defined because I know the material and the temperature. I'm going to estimate Cf using Blasius's relationship, 0.079 Reynolds to the minus a quarter, and I already know roughly what Reynolds number I'm dealing with, 10,000. So, using my Reynolds number of 10,000, using my Blasius relationship, I can work out Cf, and then knowing my material and my superficial velocity, I can work out tau, which comes out to roughly just under 4 Pascal. So now that I know tau naught, now that I know my fluid, it's water at 25 degrees C, which gives me mu and rho. I know that my dimensionless distance needs to be 30 at maximum, because all my mesh cells have to fit into that dimensionless distance of 30. So I can work out physically, for the flow situation and material that I've got, that relates to about 0.47 millimetres. So now I have a physical distance that I need to place mesh into when I'm designing the geometry for this duct. Let's have a look at what the example meshes actually look like. So here on the board are pictures of a coarse mesh and a fine mesh. And note that we've effectively got two mesh regions here. We've got a region of mesh in the middle of the system. That is where my turbulent core of the flow is going to be. And then I've got a very, very finely resolved mesh in that boundary layer at the wall. Now, depending on what geometry creation tools you're using for your flow simulation, be it OpenFOAM, be it COMSOL, be it ANSYS Fluent, you will have tools that allow you to place boundary layer meshes. Within ANSYS's meshing tool, this is an inflation tool, and what I've done is specified 10 inflation layers with a total thickness of 0.47 millimeters close to each of these walls. Now, the fine mesh is going to give me more detail and more resolution, but look at the difference in element counts for my entire geometry. There's 624,000 element volumes for my fine mesh. My coarse mesh, I've got 118,800 volume elements. And of course, the number of volume elements is a direct indicator of how much computer memory you're likely to need in order to solve the situation. Now, in the third tutorial that you will have had handed out to you, there are step-by-step instructions for creating a similar geometry to this for the problem that you're going to be looking at. So that's k omega. What happens if we're using k-epsilon? Remember, k-epsilon can't resolve all the way to the wall, and the mesh design guidelines are therefore different. Let's have a look at another example. Now, the flow physics in this example is the same. We've still got water at 25 degrees C, we've still got our square section duct having an area of a square centimetre and a length of 5 centimetres, and we have a superficial velocity of a metre per second still. So we're going to use the k-epsilon model now at the same Reynolds number as before, 10,000. And now what we need to know is the physical distance from the wall. The centroid of the cell closest to the walls needs to be placed. Now, the advice is that you place the centroid of your mesh cell at y plus equals 30. Remember, the centroid is not the same as the mesh cell. And so what we'll also want to find out is what is the thickness of this mesh cell. Now, since the physical properties, since the flow geometry and the Reynolds number are the same as before, calculating where y plus equals 30 is the same as what we've done before. If you remember, what we did was first of all estimate shear stress, and we did this via friction factor and a half rho u squared. We estimated friction factor using Blasius. We found that my shear stress was just under 4 Pascal. So there's a reminder of what we did. So we need to calculate the physical distance y where the centroid of the cell gets placed, and that is as before at 0.47 millimeters. The thickness of the cell, I'm going to say, is twice this distance, because if the centroid is the centre of my cell, evidently then the width of the cell is twice that, and so the cell nearest the wall in this particular example needs to be just under 1 millimetre in thickness, which is a very, very different looking mesh. So let's have a look at what these meshes look like. There is my coarse mesh, and there is my fine mesh. And if you look at the volume count in each of these, we'll see we've got about half the number of cells in each of these cases compared to the mesh required for k omega. So here's another very interesting difference between these two models. You're going to need more memory to run k omega compared to k epsilon. Now, we're still using the inflation tool to create these meshes within ANSYS's meshing tool, but I'm just using one inflation layer rather than 10 inflation layers. I'm also specifying the layer thickness to be twice that we specified before. And so we can still use these boundary layer creation tools to create these very, very coarse wall cells as opposed to the very, very fine wall cells. It's just a nice convenient way of doing it. And again, tutorial 3 will give step-by-step instructions for something that looks very, very similar to this. So in terms of a set of guidelines to follow when you're turbulence modelling, really you should pursue the following strategy. First of all, as with all the problems, sit down and think. Think about your flow physics, think about your compute resources, think about your project requirements. What is it you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to achieve really fine level of detail in terms of resolving what's going on? Or are you, for example, trying to calculate pressure drops or heat fluxes? Think about what your project needs and solve that problem. Don't go and solve the most complex problem you can possibly think of. Solve the simplest problem that is fit for purpose, but not one that is simpler than that. So these considerations impact the accuracy of your simulation, your cost in terms of compute resource, and also the amount of time taken to get an answer. Then think about your characteristic Reynolds number. Your Reynolds number, if you've got a complex geometry, will be different in different parts, and so you're going to have to adapt your mesh to suit that as you work through that geometry. Think in the non-dimensional world next. What values of y plus correspond to the type of closure model you're using, and then think how that physically impacts the mesh you're designing, especially given the fact that your Reynolds number may vary throughout your geometry. Your first port of call is k-epsilon. Try k-epsilon, see how it performs. It may not be the most accurate model for your purposes, but it might be the simplest that you need to solve the problem that you're trying to solve. If it's not, then try models of increasing complexity. Use the Reynolds stress model if you've got highly swirling three-dimensionally rotational flows. So impinging jets of gases, for example, works very, very nicely with Reynolds stress, but it takes a long time to solve and a higher compute overhead. So use your wall functions for wall boundary conditions, except for low Reynolds number flows and for flows that have complex near-wall physics. There's a lot of guidelines for how you specify your wall functions in the public domain and also within the documentation that vendors such as ANSYS provide. So you will find that when you look at the model setup within Fluent, here's a screenshot of the model setup. If you look at your viscous model, you'll have all sorts of options available to you. If you look at the bigger of these dialog boxes, your first option is an inviscid model. It's such a high speed flow that we don't worry about viscosity. Your second option is a laminar flow. Great, we know how to use that. Then you have different closure models. You've got a one equation turbulence model, Spanner-Almaras. You've then got your familiar k-epsilon and k-omega, your two transport equation turbulence models. Then if you look down a few lines, you've got your Reynolds stress, your 7 equation turbulence model. So those are the turbulence models that we've talked about in this course. You also here have different approaches to simulation. All your turbulence models are part of Reynolds average Navier Stokes. Then you've got large eddy simulation. You've got some close relatives as well. You've got your detached eddy simulation. Then you've got a lot of different options that you can tune as you see fit. In the model constants, and the model constants here are those for k-omega, these are the values C1 through C5 or C6 through to C8 that I've mentioned in the previous part of this course. These may be things that you may need to check as a sensitivity study when you're doing your flow validation. So, a few key points. For Reynolds averaged Navier Stokes simulations, your mesh needs to be designed according to the turbulence model that you use. If you're using the k-omega turbulence model, at least 10 mesh cells should be present in the viscosity affected region near the wall, where your non-dimensional distance away from the wall is less than or equal to 30. If you're using k-epsilon with standard wall functions, then the centroid of the mesh cell nearest the wall should be placed at non-dimensional distance y plus equals 30. So, I hope you've enjoyed this course, I hope you found it useful, and I hope you will find it useful in the future. Best of luck with your simulation work, and don't forget the key mantra: validate, validate, validate. Thank you very much.